Hey, I'm JD. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. Please hit like. And what am I doing today? I'm working on a very old 110-year-old Waltham pocket watch. It's a Hunter pocket watch, which means that the 12 o'clock is in a 9 o'clock position. Is that right? I think it is. Anyway, this is the case here, and it's in fairly good shape. There's a little tiny split in one of the hinges, but it's not of any consequence. And I've cleaned this up, and I'm just touching it up with some Rodico right now. So I did some work on this pocket watch, and I made a video previously. That's pretty good, and you got to watch it. So here, using a piece of Rodico, I'm just lightly touching up the edges of this pocket watch case. It's actually a nice case. It's gold filled, which does not mean it's gold. It means that there's two plates of gold, and they're over or sandwiched some other metal. I think it's probably nickel on the inside, but I'm not absolutely sure. You guys can let me know how correct I am. I could hit Google and figure that one out. But here I'm just cleaning the dust off the case on the inside and stuff. And the movement was not working that well at all. And I had no real amplitude on that. So I stripped the watch down completely and cleaned it. I cleaned it using my Pearl cleaning machine. And the Pearl cleaning machine is from India. It actually does a pretty good job. You just have to keep an eye on it. I wouldn't let it go without being there. I would just keep an eye while it's running. And I've put a breaker on the wall just in case something crazy happens with the machine. So the dial was in mint condition. Like I cleaned the dial with Rodico again prior to taking the movement out before. So I removed the hands and cleaned the dial. So here I'm loosening up the dial screws, and they were not really tightened down that much, so I'm loosening it up so I can just place the dial down. I am wearing a glove on one hand, so as I touch the movement, there's no sweat from my hands, although I do wash my hands before I work on the watches, so there's really no sweat on the hands. And I think years and years ago, say 100 years ago, they didn't wear gloves when they did work on watches. They just made sure their hands were very clean. So here I'm tightening up the screws here, the dial screws. The dial had 3 feet on it, and it didn't need any more. The dial feet were in good condition. I haven't had to solder on dial feet for quite some time. I may have to take my dial feet soldering machine out and start working on that just to get some practice in soldering the dial feet. So there, I've got the dial screws almost tightened down here. I'm really paying attention to where my thumb is there with the glove, to make sure I don't touch the balance. You don't want to put any pressure on the balance while you're reassembling the watch, because there's a risk that you'll snap a pivot, and then you have to start all over again and find a balance staff and put that in to replace it. So you don't want to snap the pivot on the watch, obviously. That's kind of foolish if you're doing repair on this watch and you do that. So here I'm just lining up the hole there. It's basically where the stem goes in. Now, one thing I didn't do is I didn't pull the crown out far enough, but it didn't make much difference. I was able to still put the movement in. So you have to pull the crown out normally, which pulls the stem out, obviously, and then you put the movement in, slide it in, and then take the screws and put them in, each one of them in the side. So this movement wasn't sitting really well in the case. It needed to be snapped in a bit more so that it would so the screw would be flush with the movement. And again, I'm just keeping an eye on how I screw this in and not stay away from the hairspring, stay away from everything on this watch, because it could cause you issues. So here I'm just screwing this in, and I realize it doesn't really want to screw in that well, so I'm trying to figure that out, and then I realize that, oh, the movement's really not in that well. So I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure on that movement and get that thing settled in nicely so that it'll screw in. And as I did that, the movement kind of popped in, and then I was able to put the screw in, no issue. Pick the right screwdrivers for the job. Make sure you dress your screwdrivers so they're square on the bottom and make sure that you dress them so they're not too thin on the bottom as well. They just have to be absolutely perfect for the screws. If you don't know how to dress a screwdriver, just make sure you buy backup screwdriver blades and you replace them occasionally, so you're not at risk of slipping and stuff. So sometimes I'll slip a little bit, but I won't put a lot of downward pressure on that screw. So just to make sure that it doesn't scratch the plates. The plates are in fairly good condition on this watch, so I had no real problem with that. And so I just put one screw in and just wanted to put a little pressure on it here and grab the next screw and put that in. So there we go. Close that door, baby. Close that door. I'm just taking Rodico again, man's best friend, and just wiping the any dust or residual stuff off the hinge here. The hinge was in okay shape, I'd say. It wasn't in great shape. Actually, the back hinge was in very good shape. The front hinge had a little split on it, and it looked like it needed some tender loving care, TLC. So I oiled the back hinge just a bit. So it's a good idea. Remember, when you put too much oil in this watch movement, even the case, the static electricity will draw dust into the movement, and this is how dust gets into what you think is a perfectly sealed movement. You go, how the heck did dust get in here? Well, static electricity does that. So I'm just wiping the lid down a bit, get rid of a bit of dirt. Rodico will clean it up nicely and still allow it to look vintage. There's two schools of thought. One is that you make the watch look absolutely new and do a lot of work on it and to make it look new. Or the second school of thought is that you allow it to remain looking vintage, so it looks like a 110-year-old pocket watch, but runs exceptionally well. So I'm kind of in the middle. I like to clean it up a bit. I like to give it a little bit of a shine, but I don't buff it down to take all the scratches off the case and stuff, because it just takes away from the vintage look of the watch. This is the advice you get from other watchmakers. Don't mess with the vintage look of the watch. And so here I'm going to place the hands back in, and I made a big mistake here. Nothing that would damage the watch at all, but kind of a stupid error. And what it was I didn't put the hour wheel back in or the minute wheel back in, and therefore when I put the hand on, it was just sitting on the cannon pinion, the top of the cannon pinion, and I wasn't able to actually to do the work properly. So here I'm getting the hands demagnetized. These hands stuck together when I took them out. They were absolutely magnetized. I was like, all right, got to fix this little problem. And you need to demagnetize the watch after you're finished. In this video, I don't show myself demagnetizing the watch, but I do demagnetize the watch. That's a do-do, I said. So here I'm just pulling the, hitting the demagnetizer and then pulling the hands straight out. This is a made in China demagnetizer. It doesn't cost much at all. It actually works really well. So you just hold the piece right in the middle, you press the button down, and then as you draw it out, you draw it straight out, and you draw it out, a foot and a half, 2 feet away from the demagnetizer with the button still on, and then you're good to go. So here's where I very embarrassingly try to put the hour hand back on and realize, man, that's pretty loose. What's going on here? That's a loose hour hand. Geez, there must be something wrong with that hour hand. Maybe it's something to do with the idiot who tried to put it on without putting the hour wheel back in. All right, let's start this over again. So we're going to take some of these things apart and then there's my anger fist, and then rebuild it so that I don't have to deal with this again. But I'll speed this part of it up as I deassemble it and reassemble it again. And here's the world's fastest disassembly and reassembly of a pocket watch. You know that I've got the Speedy Gonzales kind of speed here from Bugs Bunny. Taking the screws out of the dial again, and like, okay, why did I do that? I'm paying attention to my hand so I don't mess with it. So look at that. You put the hour wheel in there, and guess what? It's needed. And then I put the minute wheel and then the hour wheel in, and now it's all ready again. And so we just have to screw that back up and tighten it, and we're ready to go. And now I've slowed down myself so that I can recase this watch. I pulled the crown out further this time for recasing, which was a good move. And the watch, I had to adjust it just a tiny bit to actually get the watch aligned properly. And I just rocked it, and then the one side got in there without any big problem. Once I'd done that, I was able to I'm looking at it now and seeing if there's a gap there and saying, what's going on here? What's going on here? And all I did at the end of the day is just to rock it slightly, and that rocking of it just put it in place. So there's no big deal there. So there we go. So I got it in place now. Now I can put the case screws back in. The case screws were in excellent shape. I didn't need to polish them. They were looking really good. I just wanted to make sure that they were in snug. You don't have to over tighten the case screws as long as they're in nicely. They shouldn't go anywhere. Remembering that the watch is not really moving around a lot. Once it's cased, you're pretty good. So there, I could tighten that case screw up a bit. And I'm all along thinking, how did I forget to put in the minute wheel and the hour wheel? Who forgets to do that, right? But it gave me some training on how to remove a watch movement from a case again. It's all good, man. It's all good. So now I'm cleaning up the face with Rodico again. And when you're cleaning up the face of the watch, don't dig into the hole where the seconds hand is, because the pivot is there, and it's usually the fourth wheel pivot that's there. And don't dig in too deep, because you can cause all kinds of problems if you bend that with the Rodico. So what I like to do here is I just put that hour hand in. It doesn't matter if it's at 12 o'clock, because you're going to be able to move it up to 12 o'clock before you put the minute hand in. So put a little bit of pressure on that. And then after I put it in nicely, I usually lean forward. Here I go leaning forward so I can see exactly the tilt of the hour hand. So what I'm looking for is the distance between the end of the hour hand and the face to make sure it's pretty level and I don't have an issue. Then I look at it sideways to see if it's rocking left or right a bit. You can see me tilting it back there. And this just takes years of practice to be able to do this quickly. And I've got years of practice. So there you go. So now I'm going around here to make sure the hour hand is functioning properly, which means that the setting and winding mechanism is functioning properly. Then I'm aligning it up to the top. Once I've got it lined up to the top, then I've got to grab the minute hand. Here I put the minute hand on and had a little bit of a problem and it turned over. One of the best things to do is just drop it down on the mat again. It's not going to break or bend or twist. And it might flip over again, so you can grab it with the tweezers. If it doesn't flip over, then just grab it with Rodico and turn it over. Here I was getting things out of my way for my elbows to get down deep and dirty. And you'll notice I've combed my hair for you today. And I use a special type of comb. It's called a cat tongue comb. So I'm just looking at this hand thinking, okay, how do I put this in? I dropped it again. I'm like, darn, time to use some Rodico, which is probably a good idea. You notice I've got the Airy loop on my glasses there, my ARY loop. Highly recommended. As I've said before, don't waste your time with other loops. Just get one of these and call it a day. So here I'm lining myself up because I'm going to hold the hand with the Rodico in one hand and then use the pusher to push down just a little bit onto that minute hand. I don't want to push it all the way down yet because I want to be able to see it as I'm pushing down, because I want to make sure that minute hand clears the hour hand, and I want to make sure there's enough of a gap between the minute hand and the hour hand to let them move freely without touching. And see, I'm just aligning the 12 o'clock position because I haven't pushed it all the way in yet. If you push it all the way in, you have no chance of lining that up perfectly. Here I put it just a minute past 12 because I noticed the hour hand was a little bit past 12, like just a little bit. So it would be fundamentally lined up perfectly. So then you get the right pusher on. For pocket watches, you have to do it this way. I've tried using a very expensive watch pushers or hand pushers that I have to push on a pocket watch hand, and it just doesn't work. These were made to be pushed on like I'm doing it by hand. So once I get that pushed on, I'm just making sure it functions properly and clears the hour hand. And then I'll put it in position. So now I'm going to take the seconds hand and get that in. So the technique I always use for the seconds hand is I just lay it down next to the hole, and then I edge it forward. So I was having a little bit of a problem here, and it's very small. That's why I typically don't work on these watches, because they're so small. They're size zeros. This is a lady's watch, and a very nice lady that gave it to me to work on. So somebody said that you can trust JD, he'll do a good job. I don't like using my name in the third person because evil people did that. It's kind of arrogant anyway. So I'm lining this thing up, but it seems to be twisting, which I think there's leftover magnetism in this particular hand, which means I've got to roll that through the demagnetizer later, which I'm going to do for the whole watch to make sure there's no magnetization of the watch at all. That can affect the hairspring. This hand where it is now, even if it was magnetized, wouldn't really affect the hairspring. It's too far away, and it's not a linear force on that for magnetism. So if you're 2 feet away and you're 3 feet away, you can't do a linear line here. So I'm winding the watch up here and just give it a little tiny side shake to get it going. And so now it's running, and I got the amplitude up very high on this watch, which I was impressed with. So I just opening up the case back here. I never snapped down that case back until the very end. Even when I give it to the owner, I like to show them the movement running. So before I snap it down, so I will leave the dust cover here, kind of loosely on, and the case back will close with the dust cover on loosely. So, and there's the front of the watch, and now I've got to prep that for the actual crystal. Now, these crystals are tricky, and the first thing I want to do with this crystal is clean it up a bit. So in cleaning up the crystal, I'll just use my puffer to get any residual dust off of the movement itself before I put the crystal on. And again, I'll use Rodico to pick up any residual dust or whatever. It doesn't leave marks if you do it properly. If you don't do it properly, of course it will, but you can use a fine cloth, but I find a Rodico works so well just for picking up stuff. And what I want to do is make sure that the crystal gets the pressure here and not the ring. So if I push down on the Rodico and I'm actually pushing up on the ring, then the crystal will pop out of the ring. So in this case here, I'm applying pressure only on the crystal. I'm very lightly holding that. You saw how it slipped out of the way there. That's because I'm lightly holding the crystal, and I'm looking at it sideways or at an angle so I can see any reflection of dirt that might be on the inside of that crystal. And understanding that when you put, in this case here, I put my my movement holder, my Bergeron movement holder, the gel-filled one down, and this is so I could see any white flakes or anything that was on the inside of that crystal, using the black as a background. Again, not holding it very tight, and you can see sometimes it slips out of my hands. That way you know you're not holding it tight. Once I get the inside, I do the outside, right? To make sure that that's done, I can put a little more pressure on that because it's not going to take the crystal out of the bezel. So, and these bezels are pretty tricky. I've had owners give me pocket watches to repair, and there was no bezel. And I'm like, okay, to find a new bezel for a pocket watch, you almost have to go buy another pocket watch. It's very difficult. These are not parts that you can just pick up anywhere. And the reason why is because the case shouldn't lose its bezel unless someone just took it. So there's no reason for that. So here I'm getting my Bergeron oiling station here, and I'm taking a thicker oil here. I think that's a D5 oil. Sorry about my head. It looks like it's in pretty good shape though. So I'm putting a little bit of oil on the hinge, and I noticed when I did this too that the other side of the hinge did have a little split on it, but the owner this shouldn't be an issue if the owner doesn't abuse the case. So everything should run fine. And then after I do that, I stick it into the pith wood to clean off the end of the oiler. So sometimes it's hard to remember all the names of these things. So now I'm just lining up this the bezel here with the locking mechanism for the case, the lid. And the only way to do that is to hold it up. I'm using my fingers, but I clean it off later and make sure it's integrated. I pushed down here in the first time and it didn't really fit. And then when I lined up the front part first, it snapped down really easy. So there was no real issue there at all. I have a current pocket watch right now with a salesman's case that's giving me problems. I can't snap that down, so I may flip the two sides and see if it works then. So the salesman's case is a real pain in the butt. So if you're out there and you want me to do watch repair, I'm not going to do it if you have a snap-on salesman case. I give up on that. Spend way too much time trying to put it back on, and it's almost impossible. And I think you probably know that. So there it is. So now I've taken this and setting the time on the watch. So I looked at my my Amphibia Reef watch to see what time it was and say, okay, I can just get it around that time. So it's almost lunchtime. And I set that up nice. There's still a little leftover from the chain here that was kind of in the way. So the lady who gave me the watch didn't remove that part, and that's fine. And maybe she has a chain or maybe she doesn't. But if she doesn't have a chain, she probably should remove that. So here I'm putting pressure only on the lid and not on the hinge part. And I'm just wiping out any leftover dust, dirt that there might be in there. There shouldn't be. So that's, and always press the crown down when you close the lid. Never snap the lid closed. And I decided here for this watch to take, I'm taking Rodico and just cleaning the top here. But you'll see in a second I get a cloth out because I decided for this watch to take one of my older cloths that I've got, the chemical called Peak that you can get in a hardware store, P-E-E-K, and it's a good chemical for cleaning. And what I did was I got the cloth that was a leftover cloth with leftover Peak on it, so I didn't want to put additional Peak on that because Peak will slightly remove part of the gold plating, and I didn't want that to happen on this very nice pocket watch. So I used one of the leftover cloths. You'll see this in a second as it comes into view, and I just keep these cloths around, so I'm trying to find the one that's got a patch of Peak on it so that I can use that patch of Peak to shine this up. So I found my peach pack. Patch patch. 2 peach packs and a peach pack. So here I'm just giving it a little bit of a shine, and it does shine it up. It's kind of cool. This chemical just is there. It's on the cloth, and I probably haven't done this little shining bit for a couple of months, but the chemical's been there probably for a year, and it doesn't matter. It's still there, and it still works well. So here I'm giving it a nice shine, and you can see it starting to shine up. It won't remove the deep scratches. It's just meant to shine it up. You'd have to buff it and stuff, but like I said earlier, I don't want to make this thing look brand new. It should remain looking vintage. So there we go. It's almost completely shone. That's the past of shine. And that's it. So thanks for watching my video, and I'll catch you next time.